review in 20,000 words. This didn't go how I expected it to. In my pursuit of a review of the E.T. Personal 55 while drafting out my novel, I ran out of ink. And to my dismay, there were no light cart cartridges or alternatives in New Zealand after loads of searching. And then an ET Compact 65 popped up on the web, and so I got that, planning on doubling the review as some sort of like old style comparison. And then two pages later, that ran out too, and my heart seized in a panic. But then it dawned on me. Sometimes the wheel doesn't need to be reinvented. Sometimes it just needs to be refined. And so this is the definition of refined. Welcome to the Princess 300 review. 60 something, maybe even 70 years too late. The aim for this review was 20,000 words, and I managed 15,000 words in 3 weeks, but that's not including all of the little bits of writing that I've done on it in the last decade. And in the last 15,000 words at least, I've fallen in love. It's becoming law of the Writers Implements channel that an ex of mine called my Olivetti Lettera di L an ugly typewriter. But when I purchased the Princess 300 on eBay for about €100 and got it sent to her dad's house in Germany, she lugged that typewriter as hand luggage all the way back to New Zealand in a strange study of her mercurial kind of kindness. And so the story of my Princess 300 in my possession carries a sort of charm to it, encapsulating a generous spirit despite me only using it sort of intermittently over the past decade. Made by Keller and Nappich, a company that would ultimately pivot into robotics of all things, they actually started out making lamps and welding and cutting for various industries. And after World War II, they switched to consumer goods and trying their hand at typewriters. And thus, the Princess line of typewriters was born. Made to be ultra portable, it was a feat of engineering, in my opinion at least, because it's so small and it's luxurious in design and materials with a deep, rich red set against a gorgeous cream color and gold cursive Princess 300 scrawled across the top. It really, really lives up to its princess moniker. Now, as I said, it's small. Don't let its diminutive stature fool you though. This thing is dense. If typewriters were celestial bodies, this would be a neutron star. If we compare it to the last typewriter I reviewed, this one, the gorgeous Olivetti Valentine, the Valentine, it's wider, deeper, and taller than the Princess. It's about 82% larger by volume, but the Princess 300 is 20% heavier, weighing in at a whopping 5.5 kilograms for something so small. But then that all comes into focus when you consider its all-metal construction. Apart from like bits like the plate and the color changer, the keys, a couple of knobs, and of course the ribbon, the rest of it is just made of steel and aluminium. The resulting feel is a tight machine. It's similar to, in feeling at least, to the Hermes 3000 in my opinion. Maybe a bit tighter. To actually place some descriptions onto its fairly small shoulders, I'd call it a resplendently refined machine, perfectly precise, intensely intolerant, delightfully so, and overall justly German. And this leads us on to the typing experience. The last descriptor I used, German, applies here too. The Princess 300 operates with what feels like atomic precision, to the point where I found that it needs to be kept like pretty immaculate. Where Olivetti typewriters like this one feel like they're pretty loose in comparison, like they can just sort of, boom, handle a room full of dust and just plow on. The Princess 300, it's a little bit more finicky than that. You know, mine would get a little bit dusty and the R threw a tantrum. And some of the other less frequently used keys also experience a bit of gumminess if not used regularly. Like the umlaut keys had a bit of stickiness that some isopropyl alcohol sorted out, along with some vigorous typing. I had some other issues as well. The color selector actually slipped and would no longer change colors on the ribbon. It works on a ratchet and spring system, so you press the button and it pushes the selector along a little, pushes along. Now that slipped, and basically I had to sort of get it and put the little ratcheting system back together along with a spring that had come off, and then it just worked. But I never used anything other than black, but I had a red and black ribbon, and so whenever I was hitting the shift button, my capitals were coming out in red, so it had to be fixed. And I also found that the ribbon vibrator doesn't go all the way down all the time, so it sort of half blocks words, but I haven't fixed that problem. Instead, I just fixed myself. You know, I learned to live with it. Oh, yeah, and one more thing. The ribbon just goes way too fast, going through the entire ribbon in a couple of pages. Something is wrong with the tensioner, but I've not got around to fixing it yet. And for now, I just reverse the ribbon, and then when I get to the end, I go back and forth over it. And it's like doing shuttle runs on the ribbon. But it works for now. But with my little niggles sort of solved, my fingers danced the waltz across the keys. They're very, very comfortable, just sturdy, just very locked into place. And this is where it excels. It's truly a type anywhere machine. It's significantly well more balanced than this one, but this one stalls all its weight in its ass. And as a result, the Princess 300 is stable on my desk, it's stable on my lap, on the couch, pretty much anywhere. And it feels lighter as a result. And it doesn't move much once it's there. Though it does sort of suffer from the same sort of bounce skip feeling when used on a less firm surface. And it's the same issue that I had with my DL. Now the font. The font is very rounded. 10 pitch pica. I think it's pica. It's sturdy to look at, and it looks as if it's trying to fill up the page, unlike the more squat version of the pica coming from the Valentine. And I actually prefer the Princess's rendition of this font. It's as if it's more commanding. It's more confident in style with no room for error. It's hard to describe, but as a writer of fiction, having something slap my lies onto the page with such brazen confidence fills me with a delightful hubris. Hubris specifically because only an audience will be able to determine the quality of my writing. But it is great for productivity, anywhere, anytime. But aside from the broad strokes, the little details here are just perfect. The name badge all in metal, clipped securely in with metal tabs, and the bottom isn't forgotten with 4 smart feet and a hard-wearing leather vinyl. There's also a polite ding from the margin bell, and the smoothness and tightness of every button and lever is exemplary. The paper bale is insanely strong though. I tried to pull paper out dramatically and wasn't quite at the end, and rip paper. R.I.P. Let's be sensible. And finally, the Princess and all its metallic glory is ferrous, so my kids like to decorate it with magnets. Nice. Now, I suppose also I should address the umlaut in the alphabet here. No, I don't know any German other than a few funny words like Pferd, Schweinehund, Krankenwagen, and some bad words too like Schlepper, Scheisse, but I don't have many uses for the umlaut letters, and they get gummed up from a lack of use. But the keyboard is amazingly complete for writing in English, at least, featuring an actual 1 and an exclamation mark. It's also got a QWERTZ keyboard, so I had to get used to that with the Z and the Y being swapped over. But it only took an hour or so, and I proved to myself that I was surprisingly adaptable. I'd only make that mistake every once in a while after that. No issues. This is a draft after all. And setting tabs is incredibly easy and precise, and setting the margins is as simple as just sliding the tabs along the back of the carriage. No difficulties at all. And then there's a big red tab button, which is easy to hit and doesn't feel like it's gonna break the typewriter when you press it down and it slides along a little bit. While you're typing, the shift and caps lock key actually moves the entire carriage as opposed to just the keys like the Valentine does. Took a little bit of getting used to after coming from the last manual typewriter, the Valentine. But I actually think I do prefer the Valentine in this aspect though. So, you know, but on such a low profile machine, a carriage shift mechanism just works really well. It makes sense. And feeling like you can write anywhere is important. And that's what sets this machine apart. So far, it's been the closest typewriter iteration to the modern day laptop in terms of manual typewriter. It's low profile, it stores away easily, and it comes out even easier. In its movements, it's sort of picked up a few nicks here and there, which are pretty unforgiving with paint on metal, but it just adds character. And I've said it before and I'll say it again. I am not a museum. These machines with me are made to be used, and if they catch a few strays along the way, then so be it. It's not perfect after all these years. The margin is a little bit spongy, resulting in it sort of starting back and forward one space of where it's meant to be, depending on how assertively I move the machine along. But other than that, it feels indestructible. And ultimately, Kele and Napik sold their typewriter production line to a Bulgarian outfit who kept the Princess dream alive, so in design at least. And apparently they're less precise than their predecessors. And so I feel like with the Princess 300, I have lightning in a bottle in my possession, and it's special. And I think back to how the Princess makes me feel as an author. Empowered. Empowered enough to use the word author to describe myself at least. You see what I mean by hubris? And now I'm back in Latvia. I'm on my Valentine, and suddenly the gloss of this machine feels more like plastic fantastic, and I think of my princess in exile, halfway around the world. It's just better, and I want it back. Maybe this Princess 300 with its enchanting looks and action and confidence, maybe it captured my ex as well. And perhaps then I should extend my repeated Dankeschön to my ex for this, my favorite typewriter. So now, Dankeschön. You know not your impact, even if you're wrong about the DL.